Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do today. We have a little bit of, before we talk about the Torah, we have a guest on, and we're going to ask, where is he? I'm going to open up Bill's microphone, and he's going to introduce.
You have to introduce. Well,
there you go, Bill. You're going to introduce your granddaughter.
Our granddaughter, Melanie, is in Israel, and she's going to be talking about some of her experiences in Israel. Her mom and dad are here, and we have a number of other people that are tied in with the program. And if you're ready for Melanie, she can start whenever you want.
Well, her mic is open.
Rabbi.
I just want to say that we really appreciate Melanie being with us, because for the last couple of decades, she comes every Thanksgiving, and with
Yes.
to be with her grandfather, and his birthday, which was Wednesday of this past Wednesday, where he was a very young, 102 years of age. And I think it's wonderful. And so Melanie is in Israel, and she's coming on to honor us today and honor him by telling us what's going on. Okay, Melanie, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, and hello to my family. Sorry I couldn't be there. I think it's the first time in quite a few years that I'm missing it. So yeah, I thought I would talk for a few minutes, and then if anybody wants to ask some questions, I can answer some questions about what's going on. And then I'm gonna tonight I'm going to a rally for the rest of the hostages, so I'll be heading out soon afterwards. So hold on. Okay, so I've been writing about archaeology extensively over the past year for Times of Israel, and I often read the Torah when I'm writing, because so many of the things that we are studying from thousands of years ago are also written in these pages. But it was so strange to see words for an event that is simply ripped from the headlines. The capture and kidnapping of almost 250 people, Israelis, foreign workers, mothers, grandmothers, soldiers, children as young as 9 months. You have all seen their photos and read their stories. There isn't a corner of Tel Aviv where their faces don't look up at us, beseeching us for their help. There is no greater mitzvah than redeeming captives, writes Maimonides almost 1,000 years ago. Redeeming captives takes precedence over feeding the poor and clothing them, since the captive is included among the hungry, thirsty, and naked, in danger of losing their lives. And one who averts his eyes from redeeming them transgresses. Do not harden your heart or shut your hand, and do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor, and nullifies the commandments. You shall surely revive your brother. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Maimonides wrote this in the Mishneh Torah, laws of gifts to the poor. And he also, in the Shulchan Aruch, it's written, every moment that one delays in redeeming captives, when it is possible to expedite, it is considered as if one has shed blood. When I was starting out as a journalist, I lived in Jerusalem, some 15 years ago, just around the corner from the Prime Minister's residence. Soon after I arrived, the family of Gilad Shalit, a kidnapped soldier who was kidnapped in 2006, marched from their home in Israel's north towards Jerusalem, and they sat outside in a protest tent outside of Bibi's residence for 2 years. Every day, multiple times a day, I had to pass them on the way to and from my house, remembering always, looking at his parents and thinking, Gilad Shalit is still in Gaza. I am here and he is there. For years, activists and supporters would stand and hand out yellow ribbons. A yellow ribbon was a symbol for your support for a deal to release Gilad Shalit in exchange for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. When Shalit was finally released after more than 5 years in captivity, More than 80% of Israelis supported the deal that released 1,027 prisoners in exchange for a single Israeli soldier. I was a new Israeli at the time and so moved to be part of a country that places so much value on a single human life that the vast majority of the country supported such a radical deal. I was covering the deal from a prison outside of Jerusalem. I will never forget the cheer that went up among the journalists when the prisoners began to leave the gates. We knew at that moment Gilad Shalit was on Israeli soil. And now we have been plunged into unimaginable trauma since October 7th, a nation so steeped in grief and shock that we can barely get through the day. When I first saw people handing out yellow ribbons across from the Kiryat in Tel Aviv, where the defense ministry sits, my heart caught in my throat. We are back here again. How can we do this again, multiplied by 250? I don't think it's possible to grasp what a large number 250 is. Not even when you see a plaza full of empty beds, 250 of them, made up as if the person had just woken up with glasses and crumpled socks on a pillow, or a baby's crib filled with stuffed animals, an art exhibit, one for each of the hostages taken, or the Shabbat table set up for 250 people, waiting and empty. Recent polls have shown somewhere around 40 to 60% of Israelis support a prisoner swap for the hostages. We all know now that Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the October 7th attack, was released in the exchange for Gilad Shalit in 2011. So it's understandable their anger, their objections. Even 1,000 years ago, Maimonides wrote on this subject, "We do not redeem captives for more than their mipnei tikkun olam, lest their enemies pursue them to capture them again." There is concern that paying too high of a price could inspire more kidnappings, more abductions. Last night, I was working from home, monitoring the barrage of news at my new job. But when they showed the first glimpses of Israelis crossing the border back into Israel, I couldn't hold back my tears. We had no idea if they were still alive, really, amidst this nightmare. And to see them walking back into Israel was like seeing an entire world come back home. We don't know what they have gone through and the trauma they have endured, and there is no precedent in humanity for trying to help such a large population of people overcome their trauma and re-enter society. But for a moment, the same exact newscasters that I watched more than 10 years ago as Gilad Shalit emerged into the Israeli sunlight also choked up, as the first 13 Israelis, 10 Thai and 1 Filipino, all returned to Israel. Regardless of what will happen over the next few days or weeks or months, I am grateful for each and every captive that has returned to us, though I'm still thinking of the 220 that are still there. I never thought we would personally experience something the Jewish sages have been arguing about for 1,000 years. Today, there has been a steady stream of photos of families reuniting with their loved ones. It's impossible to imagine what they went through, but in those hugs is a spark of light amidst all of the darkness that has fallen upon us. And that is all we can do now, grasp at these sparks of light and hold as tight to them as we possibly can. And to remember the words of Maimonides that he wrote 1,000 years ago and still rings so true today, there is no greater mitzvah than redeeming captives.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I am going to ask you the following. I'm going to allow you guys to open your mics, but only if you only open it if you're going to ask a question, and then close it when you're done, because otherwise we hear everything you're saying, talking to each other or talking out loud. So if you do want to ask a question, just open your mic and ask the question and then close it again. Okay? Anybody want to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, Marilyn.
Melanie, thank you for your very eloquent speech about what history has taught us and everything involved with Maimonides and the saving of hostages. But could you please give us the current information about what is taking place today? Because on the American TV set, we hear that nothing has been done in regards to exchanging more prisoners today?
Oops.
Oh, we can't hear.
Did
Am I-
Melanie?
Her mic is.
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah, and it was supposed to happen at 4 p.m., but nothing really is going on schedule these days. So it's still on schedule. There's between 10 and 14 Israelis that are supposed to be released today. And then we're also hoping for a number of, there's still about 20 Thai foreign workers who are in Israel who are still in captivity, and they're actually being negotiated in a separate deal between Thailand and Iran. So which is great because the deal that we negotiated was only for a specific number, and the number of workers is not included in that. So it means that they're coming out of Gaza even faster than we had hoped. So
Is there a list of names which would indicate the nationality of the hostages that are being released?
there is a list of names, but it's which I have, but it's not which my work has, but it's not being released to the public until the hostages are on Israeli soil and until they've been identified by Israeli officials. And that's because we don't know what could happen at the last minute. And last night, actually, what happened was there was a woman, Hannah Katsir, and the terror group that was holding her, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, had put out a notice that she was killed, and then she was released. And it's a type of psychological terror that they are using against the families and the entire society here. So for that reason, the names are not being released until they have been confirmed in Israel. And they are they're released it takes a while for them to go from the place where they're being held. Right now, we believe it's a hospital in Khan Yunis, to the border with Egypt. Then they have to pass through the border with Egypt into Egypt, and then they drive through Egypt on the border to Israel and pass through the border again into Israel. And the whole operation takes quite a few hours. Then they're flown. If they need urgent medical treatment, they're treated they're flown to a certain hospital, and then they're flown to the center of the country. And there's a number of hospitals that are ready to accept them. So.
I preeminently thank you for educating us about what is taking place, because we get a very edited version of what is taking place. So we're getting it from someone who knows what she's talking about. And we thank you for all the years that you spoke at our synagogue, Beit Shalom, and to your wonderful grandfather, who 120 and one day, may you celebrate his birthday.
Amen.
Thank you.
Melanie, how many jobs is this that we know you since your first job?
Well, in the past month, I've worked for 4 different publications.
That's right. When was then the last one was in Africa, right? One was in
What?
Africa. You were in Africa?
Yeah, I started at the Jerusalem Post, and then I worked for a number of years at the Times of Israel and Global Sisters Report, and I worked with nuns. And then I freelanced for a while, and then I just started last week a job at the Associated Press.
All the
So-
best. Oh, that's great. That's great. That's
Yeah.
honestly, I just want to tell you, we get nothing in the press here. We get nothing. We get nothing but lies from everybody. And the unfortunate thing is, I was watching the Thanksgiving Day parade. Okay, now we are swamped by anti-Semitism right now. It's like Hitler in 1938, exactly. The way they're taking over the government, et cetera, et cetera. But also, the fact is, I was watching the parade, and as a float. Oh, by the way, they glued themselves to the street where the parade was going to go through, right in front of Macy's. You remember that when you were a kid, right? Right in front of Macy's, they glued themselves, and the parade had to go around them. Finally, the cops came in and they started to peel them off. You know, they should have taken their legs off. But the idea was that I was still watching the parade. And on the parade, a float was going by with a little kid. A little kid pulled a map out of, not a map, flag out of his shirt, and he was holding that up. It was an of course, it wasn't our flag, it was their flag. So I just want to show you the young kid. He must have been like, I think 15, at least 15 years old, and that was it. And that's what's happening here. It's so scary because we're fighting not only in Israel, we're fighting here. We're fighting here because people won't walk on with a Mogen David hanging on the shirt. People are getting, everything's happening to us too. So we're feeling the war, not just ourselves. It's not just our poor people in Israel, but the fact is that we are suffering the same, and our prayers are the same as yours. And we love you very much, darling. For waking up so early in the morning, because I know my friend Alan lives in Yerushalayim, and he calls me every single day. And he's been driving his own car, taking soldiers from the back and forth from the front, and he's also picking stuff at the airport to bring to the soldiers. So it's unbelievable. At least I have somebody every day, at least 3 hours on the phone with him. He's in Jerusalem. So be well, take care of yourself, be careful. We love you so much.
Israel.
We love you so much.
In Israel.
Never change that hairstyle. Never.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
I'm Ethel Shevlin, and the first thing I have to do is wish your grandfather a very, very happy birthday. I have the honor of knowing Bill Lidman and your late grandma for many years from Bet
Yes.
Shalom. And he's one very honored, special gentleman, and I wish him only the best till 120 in a day. But just to remain in good health and to keep saying the Oshrei for us, because Bill, you can't let us down. And on the other hand, talking about Israel, I agree with releasing the captives. I'm definitely, my heart is torn when I see babies reunited with parents and vice versa, and grandparents. Yes, I agree, and I agree with release. I just agree with what's going on. However, on the other hand, by releasing all the captives and the Hamas, the barbarians, them regrouping and reforming and repositioning themselves so that they can attack again, I'm just concerned for how long we can give them that opportunity to regroup, reposition, so that they can attack once again. And again, Israel will have to fight again and lose Israeli soldiers again, and lives will be lost. And I understand their whole theory of taking hostages, but we're losing Israeli soldiers as well. So what's more important? What do we do first? I don't know. I don't know what the end will be. All I know is I was one of the fortunate ones from Monroe Township to go to Washington for the Israeli rally, and it was a day that I will never forget. But that was a day that I will never forget for the simple reason that I had 500,000 Jews, surrounded by 500,000 Jews. And, when I think of them losing their lives in battle, these beautiful young students from yeshivas and day schools with the Jewish flag tied around their neck, hanging down their back, with the ruach and the excitement and their love of Israel. And then I think of losing them in battle. I'm between them, betwixt myself. I don't know how to even answer it, and I don't know what the end will be. I don't know anyone who knows what the end will be. So Melanie, just fill me in, make me feel good.
Yeah.
She can't.
I will say that one thing that's been so useful for, I think, people here is, is gathering together in person. I think that these events can be really isolating and really awful. And it's been so wonderful for us to gather together, at least with the families in the Hostages Plaza, and just let them know that they're not alone. And so I wanted to put a plea out, you know, to your community that I know that, and I really admire Rabbi for keeping on the virtual services for so long. But I really hope that maybe you can organize an in-person meetup just for coffee, because I think that what I hear a lot of pain and isolation right now from all of you. And I think that as Jews, we know that it's so important to get together and to be strong together. And I really think that it's an important time to see each other in person and to remember that you're not alone. And I know even if it's not possible because you don't have a building anymore, you know, like the diner, that's a great diner. Go to the diner and just meet up for coffee, meet up for lunch, maybe have like a little, you know, a little Torah session. But I really think that during these times, it's so important to be with other people going through similar things and similar feelings, just to remember that you're not alone.
Thank you.
Hashem.
Thanks, Melanie.
Baruch Hashem.
Anybody else want to say something? Okay. Thank you, Melanie. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
You're,
I'll just put out, and my last plea is that, in addition to my work, I'm also volunteering with an organization that does knitting circles for evacuees and survivors. And so if any of you have connections to knitting groups that might want to donate or anything, I will put my email in the chat, and you can
Do
feel
that.
free to
Please.
be in touch.
We have Lois Flomholz, the knitter. She's the knitter, the queen of the knitters.
Melanie, to name, like, list some of the items
Right.
that you would need, and knitted items, such as we used to do caps for Israeli soldiers, then for infants, baby infants.
They're doing
But is
baby
that what you're
clothes.
talking about, or
No,
something?
no, Melanie, this is Marcy, Melanie's mom. Melanie, you can put my Venmo or my email. And so I can send people my address. What they're really looking for is money to purchase yarn.
Yeah,
So-
actually,
okay.
it's or we sit with women and knit, and then they knit for themselves, and it's meant to be a type of therapy. The women, and we're not asking them to knit. Some of them are knitting hats for soldiers, some of them are knitting hats for babies, but it's really meant to be a kind of personal therapy. Yesterday
okay.
I
Yes.
went, and the
So
women,
if your mom can send us where to mail a
Definitely.
donation specifically for
Yeah,
that, we would
let me
really
make-
appreciate that.
Let me caution you not to say it online, because there are
No,
online, you're on YouTube, but we'll do it through email
Well,
after.
you know,
after.
Yes.
Melanie, tell
send it
your
to-
mom to send it to Rabbi Eli Perlman,
I
and he
will
can
send it-
distribute.
Okay,
Yes.
I will send it to Rabbi Perlman and he can distribute it. And I
I
just
will
want
do
to
that.
say that I want to thank Rabbi Perlman for giving us this opportunity. And I ask all of you to think of what it's like for Bill and Ed, my husband, and myself to hear this and think of us. And Melanie, we love you and we support you. And we just hope that you're safe.
May I say something, Rabbi?
Sure.
To the members of the Board of Trustees, you are now going to get a request. I will send you an email with the request, and hopefully we can donate something to Melanie's cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
And
it.
you don't have to thank me. You have to thank Bill. Bill called me and asked me, would you like it if I asked him last week, is Melanie coming for
Yes.
Thanksgiving? And he said, no. Then he calls me up and he says, should I arrange for her to come on and explain? And I said, absolutely. Don't thank me. This is our greatest honor to have her here to tell us about this.
She's
Yeah.
like
Thank you so
family.
much.
She's family.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
this community is so important to Grandpa, and I know
course.
I think
And
it's
he's
amazing.
important to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a great, yes, so.
Important to everybody. It's great. All
All right,
right.
we love you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Melanie.
All right,
Yeah, thank you
I'm
so
gonna-
much for
Thank
your
you.
help, and yeah,
Stay
and
safe.
We appreciate your support here in Israel.
And stay,
And
yes, stay safe and
Melanie,
healthy.
Am Israel Chai.
thank you.
I'm Israel. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm
I'll have
closing
to,
the
I'm
mics
heading out
again.
now to the protest, but lovely to see you all and happy
Take care.
Thanksgiving.
Same here, same here.
Stay safe.
Stay
Stay
safe.
Take
safe.
care. All right, I'm shutting down the mics now because I'm going to say a few things. I know it's late, but stuff happened this week that I want to share with you. It doesn't make me as happy as I should be. I never had a bad day, but that doesn't mean they're all happy ones, right? So, what happened here? Okay. We all know that Yaakov's enemy through most of this week's Torah reading is his uncle, his father-in-law, Lavan. I made that very clear. He's a buminka. He gives Lavan the wrong wife. He cheats on him with his wages and his savings. Yaakov and his family flee from Lavan, and with Rachel stealing the idols that her father worships. And this proves to be a horrible decision on her part, which we'll find about next time, not today. But anyway, Lavan is clearly greedy regarding money, but the rabbis saw him as much more vicious of an enemy of Yaakov and his offspring. The Pesach Haggadah begins by telling the story of Bnei Yisrael and Mitzrayim with the following: go and learn what Lavan, the Aramean, sought to do to Yaakov, our father. While Paro declared a death sentence against all the male children, Lavan wanted to uproot the entire people, as it is written, an Aramean tried to kill my father. That's what it says in the Haggadah. In other words, unlike Paro, Lavan sought to commit complete genocide, kill them all. Paro was the firstborn. So I often speak of the chutzpah of the rabbis who translated this verse of Haggadah differently than it was supposed to be, than it was written. They just changed the meaning of it. The original Hebrew from Devarim or Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 5 is, my father was a wandering Aramean. And this is referring to the ritual of the first fruits, not anything else. But this was like around, this was describing for, not for Pesach, but for Shavuot, the first fruits. But since the sages want us to understand that there are different ways to kill the Jews, the Haggadah retranslates, my father was a wandering Aramean, to an Aramean tried to kill my father. The rabbis wanted us to understand that Lavan wanted to destroy Yaakov and his family immediately. But Paro wanted to do it more slowly over time. But they both wanted to do it. Of course, the rabbi's translation is an interpretation and is meant to be understood that way. They never said this is what that line means. This is how they want you to understand what it could mean. The fact is, at no point does the Torah ever tell us that Lavan wants to kill his son-in-law, his daughters who were married to him, and his grandchildren. But the rabbis were readying us for what was to come, and they were quite prophetic. After Lavan came Egyptian slavery, and after that, the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, the pogroms, the Shoah, and now it's only a few. No matter how hard we look, we will find no other people in all of recorded history. I don't care how hard you look. Take a microscope. Nobody in all of recorded history of the world has wanted to eliminate more than the Jewish people. Never. While the Nazis killed 6 million Jews, there are other notable victims of genocide, including the Armenians at the hands of the Turks, the Tutsis at the hand of the Hutus in Rwanda, the Uyghurs by China, and there are so many more. But only the Jewish people have endured so many attempts to be eliminated through genocidal attempts through so many millennia and on so many continents. Only the Jewish people. Nobody comes close to that. There must be no confusion as to what genocide means. Genocide is an attempt to exterminate the entire national, religious, or cultural group, regardless of which one it is. That's what genocide means. It is for this reason that genocide is the correct word when referring to what happened on October 7th, the day when Hamas declared their intent to eliminate not just Israel and the Jews who live there, but every Jew on the planet. They began this attempted genocide against the Jewish people by raping, torturing, and murdering over 1,200 men, women, children, babies, and the elderly. They captured well over 250 hostages, many of which are turning up with the appearance of being tortured to death. Just saw one yesterday. The thing is, genocide is the proudly claimed goal of Hamas and those like them who are located all over the globe. It is not just Hamas. When pro-Palestinian demonstrators shout, "From the river to the sea, Palestine should be free," they are calling for destroying all 7 million Jews who live in Israel. That cannot be confused with anything but a vicious call for Jewish genocide. It can't be confused. I repeat, Hamas has made it clear that their goal is the genocide of not just Israeli Jews, but Jews throughout the world. Not only that, Hamas also declared that it wants to wipe out all the Christians in the world. But in our topsy-turvy world, Israel is the one being accused of genocide. In this context, while people disagree about the proper Israeli response to the vicious Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, I believe Israel has no choice. The cancer known as Hamas must be destroyed. Think about this. If Israel was seeking genocide against Palestinians, they would not have dropped leaflets telling Gazans to flee certain neighborhoods. They would not have slowly gone building to building, seeking to save as many civilian lives as possible by giving up extra lives of themselves. They would not have sent in portable incubators to save Gazan babies. In fact, if genocide was Israel's goal, Israel has the ability and the means to have ended that war on or even before October 8th by simply blowing up all of Gaza without any conscience. Just blow it up, gone. Could have done that. They have the means. Not Israel. Based on the definition of genocide, accusing Israel of this is completely outrageous and shameful. Yet that is what the global press and social media have no problem spreading. Even more disgusting is that this is not only from the press, not only from the professional and social media, not only from pro-Palestinian demonstrators, but even more horrendous and disgusting. This incorrect accusation comes from the mouths of too many Jews, and even more horribly, out of the pie holes of some of the most ignorant Jews who happen to call themselves rabbis. The Jewish Voice for Peace Rabbinical Council is a network of rabbis, cantors, and rabbinical students who support the Palestinian Solidarity Movement. These are not Orthodox Jews. These are rabbis. These are not, none of them are Orthodox. They're conservative and most of them are Reform. This is a group of rabbis who since 2011 have come together to act for justice for Palestinians and Israelis, including following the Palestinian call for BDS, boycott, divest, and sanctions against Israel. They're actively calling for it. And if I use the expletives that are going through my mind right now as I think about these repulsive cretins, there would not be enough soap in the world needed to wash out my mouth and brain. Getting back to the embarrassing organization called the Jewish Voice for Peace, the professional and social media are more than happy to be republishing opinion pieces offered by this pathetic organization. These hit pieces are vicious attacks against Israel. These anti-Semites love it because it is written by Jews and demands, quote, "We are calling on Israel to halt its genocidal assault on Palestinians living in Gaza," unquote. Can you believe this? To use the term genocide when discussing how Israel responds to the daily Hamas attacks on them is outrageous. We all know that if Hamas would stop wanting to eliminate Israel, there would be immediate peace. And if Israel would stop defending itself against Hamas, there would be no more Israel. I still don't think there'd be peace because they fight amongst themselves. I wonder if these rabbinical idiots would continue to be saying that Israel is committing genocide if, God forbid, and I don't wish this to happen, but if it had been their young daughters who had been raped and taken hostage on October 7th. What if Hamas beheaded and ripped the arms and legs off their babies right in front of them, leaving them to lie in their own blood in their own cribs? What if these jerks say if Hamas amputated their own fingers, what would they say? If Hamas amputated their own fingers and toes with a pair of vice grips, what would they still be saying? Would they still be saying that Hamas had the right to retaliate for what Israel was doing to them? Is that what they would still say? Can they even find a reason for Hamas wanting to eliminate Israel other than anti-Semitism? Would they still claim that Israel was committing genocide, or would they be calling for Israel to destroy Hamas? Look, this is a rhetorical question. The answer is obvious, but never laugh at or ignore what the redneck comedian Ron White says. You can't fix stupid. In closing, I must admit that as outraged and horrified as I am and remain at Hamas's actions of October 7th, my feelings became even more amplified when I saw how dangerous these absurd, dim-witted rabbis are. With those rabbis presenting themselves as Jewish leaders, can you imagine how that makes me feel? Look, I love declaring that I am an American Jew. I love it. But they are making me feel embarrassed to say I am a rabbi because I never, ever, ever want to be in a situation where I am referred to as a peer of theirs. I began my Devar Torah by saying I often speak of the chutzpah the rabbis had by retranslating that verse of Haggadah. I said they did it so we could understand that there will always be those who want to commit genocide against the Jews. I now completely understand that they didn't have any chutzpah. They were brilliant and prophetic. And that I thank them for. Shabbat Shalom. I want to thank